Hi, everyone. My name is Fayana Richards, and the name of my presentation is Money Matters with Aging Parents, How Financial Counselors Can Help. So learning objectives for our time together is we're going to talk about how ageism shapes financial conversations about retirement and long-term care planning, and also about how we can work with our clients on how to use non-ageist language to improve communication when having money conversations with family members. So I like to start with this quote by Rosalind Carter. And she recently passed away, but while she was alive, she did a lot of advocacy around caregiving. And she says, there are only four kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are caregivers, and those who will be caregivers, and those who need them. Oftentimes you can, be both, be, more than one of these different things. You could actively be involved in one of these roles. So I bring up caregiving to contextualize our conversation around having money conversations with parents, because it is a shared phenomenon. Either of all of us in this room have been recipients of care, either or give it, or both. And there is this topic of financial caregiving. So to the right, I provided this table from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and they divide it between formal and informal financial caregiving. So, this could be in the form of being a trusted contact person, a conversational partner, as well as sort of having or working with your parent to set up a convenience account. They recommend that you work with a broker or a banker if you are interested in opening up a convenience account. And essentially what being a financial caregiver is that someone who helps you manage your money, assets, and everyday financial situations. So one of the things that would be important to recommend to your clients is that, just because you have access to a family member's financial information, that does not give you the legal right to conduct financial decisions or actions on their behalf. So you can work with your clients on identifying the appropriate professionals based on their needs and stated goals in terms of their interest and desire to handle money matters when it comes to their loved ones, such as, maintaining a list of elder law attorneys. So why aging, why age, why ageism, right? So again, it is a shared phenomenon. We are all aging every day. We get older. And it touches to, in terms of thinking about the social context of aging. I really like this quote by Ashton Applegate, who says, the fear of dying is human. The fear of aging is cultural, right? So when we think about, where the role of age and thinking about ageism concerns the stereotypes, so how we think, prejudice, how we feel, and discrimination, how we act towards others and ourselves based on age, right? So when we talk about, I know that this presentation is geared towards aging in older adults. Ageism can happen across the life course, right? So think about, any kind of stereotype that you may hold against youth or middle age, right? So to the left, there is, I also want to point out that so ageism is not just internalized, right? So we have systemic ageism, right? So systemic ageism is thinking about how this bias is spread throughout society, how it is structured within our distribution of resources, policies and resources, our cultural messages, right? So, we can think about how then is society shaped to either reinforce or promote ageism in hiring policies, right? Hiring older workers, our attitudes about retirement. All of these things are shaped by what the cultural views that we have about what does it mean to belong to a certain life stage based on your age. So as a result, we understand ages. It's important to understand ageism as an equity issue, just out thinking about racism, sexism, homophobia, and so on and so forth. So ageism also is a financial equity issue, right? So older workers face workforce discrimination, hiring discrimination, wage discrimination, promotion bias, forced early retirement. There are cultural assumptions about the dependency of the older adult population, right? So this could, result in the decreased support for beneficial programs and legislation, right? There's also baked in bias around healthcare decision making, right? Based on ageist assumptions that can cause increased out-of-pocket expenses for older patients. I don't have the chat open. I'm just gonna check the comments. Yes, so someone says systemic ageism really does exist. Yes, in hiring it's prevalent even if illegal. Yes, absolutely. So understanding the role of internalized and internal personal ageism in financial counseling relationships. So in thinking about this relationship, I created this little graph um, to the left just to show that, it is a collective, right? So it's our clients to financial counselors. It's our clients to working with the clients to the parents of the clients, right? So I'm going to be sort of talking across these three different groups and sort of thinking about what that looks like in terms of having money conversations. So let's look at this counseling phenomenon of countertransference, right? So countertransference is the counselor's transfer of feelings into the client. So financial counselors, can have their own internalized ageism, right? And that can then be reflected in their interactions with our clients and thus influence our recommendations. So it's important for us to reflect on what that means for us as well and the kinds of assumptions that we have. So for example, here to the left, I created this table that talks about some of the ageist assumptions, assuming conservative investment strategies and risk tolerance exclusively for older adults without their input. Can someone in the chat or come off mute sort of what would be sort of a non-ageist reframe of exclusively recommending conservative investment strategies if you have an older client?
I'm thinking about that one.
So we have someone say, ask the client about risk tolerance first. Yes, shorter time frame to recover from loss, capital preservation, risk tolerance of the clients. Right. So find out more about, the goals of your client. Like what's their risk tolerance, right? We can't assume that everyone has the same risk tolerance. Find out their income needs, understanding their entire financial picture. What are their needs? Yes, absolutely. How much of their current financial status and what that's like. So establish investment goals. It might not be conservative. Exactly, right? So it's again, sort of like not, making assumptions. So another one is, avoiding retirement planning conversations with your younger clients, right? You might, I've seen people say, well, you're not ready for that yet. You don't need to be worrying about that, right? But again, sort of like thinking about what are our own assumptions and biases about whether you're 25, or 20-year-old client or however old, needs to be thinking about retirement planning conversations, right? And you all are talking about the sooner you start, the better. Yes, absolutely. So again, sort of going through and having some of these non-ageist reframes is a way to practice self-reflection. And a couple of questions that you can also ask and practice for self-reflection are, do I use age-neutral language when discussing financial matters with clients? Do I find myself making assumptions about a client's financial capabilities based on their age? Do I challenge stereotypes about financial behaviors associated with specific age groups? How do I counteract any preconceived notions about the financial capabilities of older or younger clients?
I love this slide.
Thank you. You're not able to see the chat as I'm moving it, are you?
No,
On
we
the
don't
screen?
see your chat. So
Okay, okay.
you're good.
So again, sort of like if you are in the sort of have the opportunity to work with your clients pre-conversation. So there's some things you can do with pre-work, right? So work with clients on understanding their own relationship with money prior to having conversations with their parents, right? Particularly as it relates to the parents. Oftentimes our early money stories or what we understand or what we know about money is shaped by our parents, right? For the good or bad, right? So you might want to figure out like have your sort of unpack those with your client, so that they don't, burst into that conversation guns blazing with their trauma, if there is any. Role reversal, right? So oftentimes when it comes to having money conversations, there might be a threat of agency or independence, right? So you don't, and it is the child's sort of, mom, let's have a conversation, as they may not be used to that, right? Because they're coming to their parents versus this, and where they've grown up with the parent sort of doing for them, and now they have to sort of have this role of like, having these conversations and doing for them, right? But also help them explore their own unconscious biases about age, right? So learning how to be mindful of language via elder speak. So I'm going to play this. Oh my goodness, time is going by so fast. But it's going to talk about sort of, again, sort of leaning into communication strategies that are non-ageist, or sort of perpetuate stereotypes and biases about older adults. Can you hear it?
No, you didn't share your sound.
Elder speak is a term coined.
Oh, yep, we do now. Go.
Okay, so this is by Ashton Applewhite.
Yale psychologist Becca Levy for the condescending language that so many people revert to, almost like baby talk for older people. Honey, sweetie, dearie, that is condescending and diminishing. And no one likes to be condescended to, of course. Her studies show that people who are spoken to in this way actually start to think and move and act differently. Even people with severe dementia, you might assume wouldn't be perceptive to that. Nobody likes to be condescended to, and certainly older people are no exception. In the US, it is really rare to be at an event that includes all ages, unless it's a family gathering or a big social event, like maybe a sports event or a march or something. And it didn't used to be this way. As recently as 150 years ago, most Americans might not even know their age, didn't celebrate their birthdays. And then it began to be, along with the Industrial Revolution, age began to become important. It started to be used as a legal indicator of when you could have access to things, marry, go to school. School began to be divided into grades. Nursery school came into existence. Old people's homes came into existence. And all those institutions had the effect of fostering segregation. People started to socialize and be educated and so on with their age peers. And when you have segregation, you foster discrimination. So ageism came along. And it is really, really important to question why, if you're in a room and everyone is the same age, why is that the case? And unless there's a good reason to reach across age boundaries. We have this idea that age is a huge gap, but in fact, age tells you very, very little about what a person is interested in or capable of. It's a much smaller gap than class, I think, or than a lot of other things that shape who we are and how we are in the world. Ageism is based on stereotypes, of course, the assumption that all members of a group are alike, which is, of course, never accurate and never right. They're especially dumb when it comes to aging because the longer we live, the more different from one another we become. A group of 7-year-olds, obviously each 7-year-old is unique, but they have a lot more in common developmentally and socially than a group of 17-year-olds who are way more homogenous than 47-year-olds and so on. So we tend to think of all older people as like old, as though they were lumped into some category, which is one reason I so heartily dislike the term the elderly, as though you somehow, fall off a cliff one day and get lumped with all these same looking and same acting and same thinking older people. When in fact, the older we are, the more heterogeneous we are and the less our chronological age says about us.
Hey, so what stood out to you in that video? How did it make you feel? Anything come up for you? Feel free to come off mute or respond.
I've always
in the
hated
chat.
those terms like sweetie, honey, things like that. Yeah, that made me think about, I hear a lot of people in the South say that to anybody, but they do definitely use those terms to the older population.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I see makes you think, glad it's a topic, great video, baby talk, and how frustrating it is. More unique as you grow older, right? And then as a side note, right, people think that your identity is static, right? But it can change. It can change over time, right? Personal growth is continuous, it's constant, right? Knowing how to talk to your elderly's language speaks volumes, brings to the forefront of your awareness, right? So again, how can we sort of relate this to having money conversations with our parents or older adults, right? At the heart of the matter is more than money, right? So it involves treating people with respect, dignity, being seen, respecting an individual's agency, transparency, flexibility, compromise, and who wouldn't want to experience these things, right? Work with your clients to be mindful of this when having conversations with their family members, and be mindful of language like you should, or I think that you should, right? So what does that look like? Non-ageist communication, right? Have your clients consider the time and place of the conversations, remind them to ask open-ended conversations that allow their family members to voice their own input, opinions, and preferences. Encourage dialogue that communicates that they intend on respecting their family members' wishes, right? So long-term planning is about them, not what is expected or what you think they should do, right? So shared decision-making is key. Make the conversation relatable, positive, proactive, share personal stories, provide examples. Other sort of important things to consider when having conversations, particularly around long-term care planning. I like to think about long-term care planning as lifestyle design, right? Sometimes that could be an easier way to sort of bring in, to bring your loved ones into the conversation. Sibling rivalry, it's a thing, right? Who's the favorite child? It can derail long-term in estate planning. If your client is not an only child, encourage your clients to maybe have a conversation with their siblings about who will have the money talk or money talks with their parents, and if they would like to be there, right? This may help reduce any negative feelings stemming from exclusion. Who needs to be involved? It doesn't have to be siblings. It could be, a spouse, a partner. Again, sort of think intentionally about who needs to be involved. Again, make sure your client understands the basics of long-term care planning. So long-term care planning does not necessarily mean planning to live in a retirement home. It can, but talk to your parent and encourage your clients to think about other sort of supports, right? So like, what are the supports that your client can sort of have conversations with their parents, or how would they like to live, right? What are their desires and needs to live the life that they want to live, and what are the supports that they need? Where are the financial supports, right? Where are the community supports that are available to them, such as there are regional areas on aging and centers for independent living that provide free and or affordable resources for older adults to age in place. There are grant programs for them to do housing accommodations. They'll put like rails in your bathtub, or like ramps in front of your house, or whatever, what have you, right? So it's a lifestyle design, like encourage your clients to have conversations with their parents about like, how would you like to live, right? So I also wanted to briefly touch upon money and care across generations, right? So your clients may be currently or anticipate providing financial support for their parents, right? There are some of us who've been doing it since you can't remember when, right? Or they anticipate it, right? So this graphic on the right, I pulled this from the Pew Research Center, and they said the majority of adult children have a great deal or a fair amount of responsibility to providing caregiving and financial help to elderly parents who need it, right? So if you look to the first statement, it says adult children providing caregiving for an elderly parent. 66 said a great deal, fair amount, some, right? Adult children providing financial assistance to an elderly parent, 55%. Some. So what does that mean for when you're sitting down with your clients and you're creating action plans and goals for their own, right? It's if you are a caregiver or anticipate providing care or helping financial caregiving, either through the assistance or directly pulling from your own resources, that needs to be considered when you're coming up with ideas and recommendations for your clients, right? So again, there are significant financial costs of caregiving, right? So think about this in terms of reduced income and benefits, right? Leaving the workforce temporarily or permanently, increased expenses that are associated with the caregiving, potential reduction of Social Security benefits, right? Let's see. Some older adults are dependent upon for support. Yes, absolutely. Sibling rivalry comes up when trying to pass on inheritance to their own children and not just for themselves. Yes, absolutely. Pretty sure if you have a conversation with elder law attorneys, they probably have and estate attorneys, they probably have stories upon stories upon stories of
Definitely.
literal and physical fights about it sort of going down, especially if you're solo without children. Yes, absolutely. Solo aging is an increasing phenomenon, and it's so important to think about what your network will look like, as well as developing your own plan, working with your money team. So so again, what can we do as financial counselors? We can think about how can we help our clients be proactive about their financial health in anticipation of potential caregiving, or if they're actively doing it. And how does caregiving impact planning activities, right? And, you know, it's anticipation, but also sort of currently, right? There's this, I don't know if you all have heard of this phenomenon called
Here, we can put them on now. Thank you.
Sandwich, the sandwich generation, right? Where, you know, you're actively caring for your own children, right? But also sort of actively providing some form of caregiving to your parents, to your spouse. And I, just for the sake of time, I'm sticking to this very sort of homogenized like family sort of like dynamics. But, you know, there are various sort of kin care relationships, right? You can be taking care of an older aunt, or, you know, you could be caring for your spouse. There's lots of different caregiving ties that, you know, may be relevant for your clients. So the only constant is change, right? So we can talk to our clients that, you know, most of us will experience changes to our physical and mental facilities even before we are considered old, right? Again, encourage your clients to not make assumptions about the abilities of their loved ones. Be mindful of the language when used when having money conversations with family members. Starting conversations with "I think you should," probably not the, you know, the best way to have this. I am also raising my niece, and she probably would not respond nicely to me telling her, "I think you should." She's 16 and very opinionated. So that, you know, that person might get offensive or come off, and it may come off as paternalistic. So you want to encourage your client also to practice self-care prior and after discussing money matters with their loved ones, right? It may take multiple attempts to successfully have a conversation about long-term and estate planning. Let's see. Yeah, so like I'm getting some very relevant comments in the chat. You know, power attorney for finance. It's all done with a financial POA. Yes, absolutely. Joint accounts provide legal access, but carry risks, but carry other risks. Authorized users. Absolutely. So, in conclusion, we are all aging. We get older every day. It's a shared phenomenon. We all have internalized biases, right? As financial counselors, we can reflect on our own and help our clients see theirs as they navigate money matters with their parents. Long-term care planning is a lifestyle design. Let's see, let me skip this.
You got time.
Oh, sorry. And that's it.